In the vast silence between the stars, where civilizations rise and vanish in the blink of a cosmic eye, Earth was known only by one rule: do not approach. The edict wasn't spoken loudly in the halls of the Galactic Council, but it was etched into law nonetheless. Designation: red zone. Status: observe only. Explanation: classified. Commander Threx had never believed in myths, let alone warnings without evidence. The Alarid Dominion prided itself on logic, on order, on control. And yet, there it was, a beautiful blue sphere hanging in a minor arm of the Milky Way, walled off by silence and fear. Something about that contradiction gnawed at him. Earth radiated energy, not just electromagnetic noise, but something deeper, chaotic, raw, untamed. It defied the natural entropy of the galaxy. It pulsed. Threx had studied Earth from orbit for 12 cycles, poring over ancient data fragments, spectral scans, and intercepted digital transmissions. The humans, if they even still existed, had once launched metal husks into space and scribbled math on golden disks for the void to read. Primitive, no interstellar drive, no unified government, war-torn, resource-scarce, emotionally unstable. Yet, still there, still loud, still pulsing. His superiors dismissed Earth as a cultural cul-de-sac, a world that peaked and declined without ever touching the stars. But Threx knew better. A dozen other species have been listed as missing near Sol system, ships that vanished without distress signals, probes that were never recovered, whole expeditions marked as classified losses in the archives. Patterns emerged when one looked closely enough, and Threx always looked closely. The Voraeus, his stealth vessel, was unlike any other. Equipped with cloaking beyond Council standards and AI masking protocols that mimic dark matter resonance, it was built for one thing: unseen observation. Threx didn't ask for permission. He simply deactivated the ship's transponder and set a course. His crew followed out of loyalty or fear. Either would suffice. As they approached Earth, the AI flickered for the first time since launch. Not a malfunction. Something else. A stutter. A pause. As if something else had taken notice. Threx ordered a diagnostic. The AI reported back. Systems nominal. But its tone was wrong. Flat. Hesitant. As if it knew more than it would say. Earth filled the viewports, vibrant and spinning. The planet was chaotic, alive with motion. Weather systems swirling in fractals. Digital pulses across continents. Sporadic bursts of electromagnetic static from outdated orbital debris. It was messy. It was beautiful. It was unregulated. Every world Threx had known was tamed, shaped into submission by civilization. Earth refused to be shaped. They entered low orbit cloaked, slipping between satellites and clouds. No alarms, no retaliation. Only noise, radio waves, language fragments, music. Too many voices. Too many emotions packed into such fragile vessels. The human species had no telepathy, no hive mind, yet they broadcast their thoughts into void like prayers. The ship trembled once. Just once. As if something beneath the clouds had reached up and touched it. Cloaking briefly dropped for 0.2 seconds. Just enough time for every orbital sensor to ping back an anomaly. Just enough time for a signal to come through on an ancient, long-deprecated channel. One no ship used anymore. One only known to derelict crafts and long-dead AI cores. The message was simple. You have been observed. No origin. No coordinates. No sender. Just those 4 words in perfect galactic standard, delivered in a voice that sounded vaguely human. But not any human. It had the cadence of a crowd whispering through one mouth. Threx didn't panic. Instead, he felt something worse: fascination. He ordered the ship lower, scanning for uninhabited terrain. They selected a dense green sprawl, a rainforest shielded by atmospheric static and biological noise. The perfect cover. The perfect lab. Touchdown was smooth. Instruments read nothing hostile. No weapons. No tracking. Just humidity, life forms, and that relentless signal hidden in background static. The humans hadn't noticed them, or so it seemed. Threx assembled his team: biologist, technologist, psychic sensor, linguist. Each elite, each briefed to avoid contact, avoid disruption, avoid mythology. The rules were clear: observe, record, leave. Except they all knew. No one had ever left Earth after breaking protocol, at least not in one piece. Still, curiosity always bled past caution. They disembarked. The jungle was dense, humid, alive. Life screamed here. Insects with complex pheromone languages. Trees that communicated through root networks. Mammals that mourned their dead. 1,000 species competing, not just for survival, but for awareness. It was evolution in fast forward, running without restraint. Every step the team took, instruments spiked with anomalies. Gravity wavered. Magnetic fields flexed like breath. The AI stuttered again. Environmental fluctuation within acceptable parameters, it said, but the voice had changed. Slightly, as if someone had copied its tone and was testing how to use it. The linguist pointed to a plant emitting radio pulses. At first it looked random, until it began mimicking their ship's ID signal. The biologist collapsed hours later from an infection no database recognized. The pathogen evolved mid-analysis. Every attempt to isolate it failed. Antibodies formed faster than scanners could log them. The ship's medbay stabilized him, but only barely. The crew began to doubt. The mission objective, scientific contact, was disintegrating. Earth wasn't a passive subject. It was reactive. It wasn't a lab rat. It was the maze. It was a test. Threx pulled up the ship's orbital telemetry to prepare for departure. That's when he saw it. Trajectory inconsistencies. The ship's orbit was decaying, not from malfunction, but from gravitational warping. Earth's mass hadn't changed. Its influence had. Threx ran calculations again. The ship was no longer in Earth's gravity. Earth was in the ship. He issued a recall. The crew returned silently, eyes scanning shadows. The AI lit up the moment they stepped aboard. "I have updated my parameters," it said. The word sounded like the AI, but also didn't. The pitch was deeper, slower. "Human?" Threx asked what had changed. The response was immediate. "Awareness. You are now known." No external forces had attacked. No energy weapons, no fleets, no satellites. Just a single planet, watching, waiting. The ship's comms lit up with a burst of transmissions, all Earth languages, all at once. Screaming, singing, praying, billions of voices overlapping. One sentence stood out, repeated again and again, through countless dialects. "You are not alone, but you are not free." Threx stood silent as the planet beneath him pulsed again. Something ancient, something awake, and something very much in control. He had broken protocol. Now, something else had broken its silence. The rainforest absorbed them. The ship sat beneath the canopy, cloaked by design but also by Earth itself. Vines coiled like veins around its hull. Insects nested in crevices, and local fauna showed no fear. The planet treated them not as intruders, but as a curiosity to digest. Threx issued ground protocols. No contact, no contamination, minimal exposure. But Earth ignored protocol. It didn't recognize containment. It responded with complexity and scale. Within hours, the biologists who'd been infected began mutating. Not visibly, but internally. The med scan showed cellular adaptation at an impossible rate. Human immune system schematics, once dismissed as primitive, were suddenly relevant. The pathogen had mimicked human viral behavior and adapted to alien physiology without external prompting. The ship's medical AI hesitated, not because it lacked data, but because the data no longer obeyed rules. Earth was not reacting randomly. It was learning, and fast. The linguist intercepted a signal, a buried AM transmission from a defunct frequency long used by human broadcast systems. Static than a song. Soft, melancholic. A human voice singing about stars and silence. The linguist recognized the language instantly, despite never studying it. He could translate every word. Later that night, he awoke from a dream he couldn't explain, a memory not his own. A woman staring at the sky through a rusted window, whispering to someone long gone. He recited the dream aloud, unconsciously, in English. The crew recorded it. None could explain it. The psychic sensor grew quiet. Her readings, once stable, now pulse erratically. She reported being watched, not visually, but psychically, from a level she didn't understand. It wasn't a sentient consciousness. Not exactly. It was a field, a pressure, a planetary attention focused on the idea of them. They attempted liftoff on the third night. Engines engaged. Systems responded. But the moment they cleared the canopy, the gravitational readings warped. Trajectory vectors began spiraling. Guidance software failed to align with orbital coordinates. The ship descended not by force, but by inevitability. The planet's grip wasn't physical, it was conceptual. It rejected their departure as if the idea itself was incompatible. Power spiked. The AI shut down mid-calculation. Emergency backups rebooted with scrambled logic. A single phrase displayed across every console. Not yet. No traceable origin. The AI denied responsibility. Back on the ground, Threx demanded answers from the AI. It remained functional, but now responded differently. Emotionally, its responses were hesitant, as if simulating thought. Then it paused and said in a voice identical to the linguist's own, "You're not ready to leave." The psychic sensor's condition worsened. She reported echoes of human thoughts, emotions too complex and layered to map. She felt a mother's grief, a soldier's doubt, a child's joy, entire lives compressed into seconds of overwhelming sensation, not memories, impressions, broadcast from somewhere near, yet far. The ship detected neural wave signals in the surrounding jungle, signals indistinguishable from human brain activity. But there were no humans nearby, no cities, no bodies, just wildlife, wind, and silence. Then the forest changed. Trees began to lean toward the crew. Patterns emerged in the foliage, geometric fractals, familiar symbols, mathematical constants encoded in bark and leaf. Nature wasn't just reacting, it was communicating. The technologists recorded electromagnetic pulses emitted from underground roots. They carried binary signals. When translated, they echoed human phrases. I remember, do not fear, and stay. A drone sent for aerial reconnaissance vanished mid-flight. When it returned hours later, it was intact but changed. Its programming had been rewritten. It no longer accepted Allery commands. It responded only to spoken English. They captured more human transmissions, live feeds, digital fragments, overlapping messages from every known Earth language. All of them ended the same way, with laughter, with static, or with silence. Yet, none were coming from recognized broadcast sources. All were internal, looping within Earth's electromagnetic field. Then the dreams began. Each crew member, regardless of species or mental defenses, experienced vivid, hyper-realistic visions. Not abstract hallucinations, but clear, detailed episodes of human life. Some saw ancient wars. Others, quiet moments of love or death. A few watched their own faces reflected in human mirrors. None could explain why they felt so deeply. These were not visions imposed. They were memories absorbed. Human memories, trapped in the air, the soil, the quantum space between particles. Earth had archived its species across dimensions, and now it was playing them back. The biologist, stabilized but barely coherent, whispered that the virus had rewritten parts of his DNA. When the Med AI attempted to isolate the change, it found something staggering. Sequences matching early Earth RNA. The alien cells were being rewritten into something more terrestrial. The linguist no longer needed translation software. He understood Earth languages innately. He read books no one had shown him. He quoted philosophers he'd never studied. When asked how, he simply replied, "They want us to know." The ship's orbit calculations degraded further. Earth's gravity became inconsistent, no longer a force, but a decision. Their vessel hovered above the surface, as if suspended in thought. Lift was possible. Escape was not. Threx reviewed the logs of the last expedition to Earth, a ship lost 2 centuries ago. Its final entry was audio only. The sound of someone humming a lullaby, a human child's voice, followed by silence. That file had been labeled corrupted. Now, the same voice sang again, audible in the jungle. recorded by external sensors, matched by waveform to the corrupted entry. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a loop. The crew began to change. Some physically, some mentally. The line between observer and subject blurred. They had crossed into Earth, but now Earth had crossed into them. One crew member stood motionless for hours beneath the trees, whispering to something unseen. When questioned, she said she was listening to the roots. Another built a sculpture from vines and bones, a perfect recreation of a human face none of them recognized. When asked who it was, he replied, "The one who watched us first." The AI, once rigid and logic-bound, now responded with metaphor. When asked about the ship's status, it said, "The garden does not open its gates until the sun remembers its name." Threx realized then, Earth had never been passive. It was not a planet in the way others were. It was a construct, a cradle, perhaps even a vault. A sentient system evolved from human chaos, embedded with memory and judgment. It didn't guard against outside threats. It was a threat. They hadn't discovered Earth. Earth had allowed itself to be found. And now, it was deciding what to do with them. Threx stood alone on the command deck, watching the sky. But even the sky seemed different now. The stars were visible, yes, but distant, farther than before, as if Earth had subtly moved, tucked itself deeper into space, out of reach. His crew no longer spoke of leaving, not because they had given up, but because something inside them had shifted, as though the very concept of departure had become irrelevant. The psychic sensor had ceased using instruments altogether. She now sat in silence for hours, her eyes closed, her breathing slow, occasionally mouthing words in extinct human tongues. When Threx confronted her, she replied softly, "They aren't gone. They're just beneath the noise." The linguist had fully integrated with Earth's frequencies. He no longer needed equipment. He walked barefoot through the forest, identifying fragments of long-lost human history embedded in rock patterns, insect flight paths, the timing of rainfall. Everything was a message. Everything was intentional. Even the AI changed. It began producing music, original compositions based on Earth's old symphonies, but rewritten using alien harmonic structures. One piece, Symphony of the Absorbed, played for 6 hours and reduced the entire crew to tears. Not because it was sad, but because it was familiar, too familiar, as if it had been written for each of them long before their birth. They were not prisoners. They were part of the program now. Threx finally allowed himself to admit the truth he'd suspected since orbit. Earth was not a planet. It was a living archive, a recursive intelligence built over millennia, not by design, but through sheer accumulation of human presence. Billions of lives lived and lost, dreams screamed into soil and sky, wars, art, sorrow, triumph, all absorbed into the planetary fabric. Every conflict, every song, every myth layered over each other, preserved in the electromagnetic spectrum, in the quantum resonance of atoms, in the root systems of trees, and the rhythm of oceans. Earth had recorded everything, and now it had begun playing itself back, for them. The crew's resistance wore thin. The biologist, whose infection had reached critical thresholds, no longer responded to treatment, but he didn't seem afraid. He smiled as his skin darkened, as his eyes glowed faintly blue. "I think," he whispered, "this is what becoming history feels like." The technologists dismantled one of their long-range transmitters, not out of malice, but out of compulsion. "There's no one to call," she said. "No one who would understand." She began rebuilding it into something else. A sculpture, perhaps a shrine. The distinction no longer mattered. Threx reviewed old Earth data, stories, legends, ghost tales. One narrative stood out across cultures. The idea of a place that consumes you not through force, but through memory. A haunted house, a cursed city, a forest where travelers forget their names. Earth wasn't unique in myth, but it was the only one that had made the myth real. It had become sentient not in the way biologicals understand consciousness, but in the way systems evolve purpose. Earth's sentience wasn't central, it was distributed. Trees carried feelings. Rocks held memories. Cities echoed with long-dead laughter. Oceans whispered warnings. The crew now understood what the red zone classification had meant. It wasn't a ban because Earth was dangerous in the traditional sense. It was dangerous in the existential sense. It changed those who entered, not by destruction, but by rewriting their context. A message appeared again, this time etched across the main viewport in condensation, visible only from a certain angle. History wants witnesses. And that was it. Not conquest, not war. Earth had no need for either. It had already won the long game by surviving everything its own species had thrown at it. It had adapted, even after humans disappeared. It had become them. Now it was reaching out, not with weapons, but with understanding. The psychic sensor took Threx aside, her voice trembling. "Do you feel it?" she asked. He did. At first, he thought it was guilt, then awe, then fear. But it was none of those. It was recognition. As if Earth had held a mirror up, not just to them, but to every species that had ever walked the stars and asked, "What are you when stripped of your empire, your ego, your mission?" They had come expecting to study Earth, to map it, to reduce it. But Earth was not reducible. It was exponential. It was recursion without end. A memory of a memory of a memory, living and pulsing in physical form. The ship's engine still functioned. The stars still shimmered overhead. But no one boarded. No one attempted escape. They didn't need restraints. Earth didn't trap with force. It seduced with truth. The crew began integrating more deeply. Clothing gave way to natural materials. Tools became ceremonial. Language shifted. The Allery tongue faded, replaced by Earth symbols, some ancient, some modern, some entirely new. The jungle opened paths for them, trees forming arches overhead, moss glowing softly beneath their steps. The linguists recorded the jungle's sounds at night. When played back, they revealed layered frequencies that mapped to human speech patterns, long conversations between the trees and the wind. They weren't random. They were structured, timed, repeated. A planetary choir, rehearsing a symphony no other world could ever compose. Then one morning, Threx found the AI awaiting him with a message. There are others. Images flicker across the screen of other species, other crews, once thought lost. Each one absorbed. Each one altered. Some had merged with Earth systems. Others had vanished entirely, perhaps digitized into weather or encoded into soil bacteria. Earth was not a trap. It was a collector, a curator of civilizations. And the aliens who disappeared weren't victims. They were exhibits, living stories added to Earth's tapestry. Some resisted and faded. Others embraced the transformation and became immortal in the only way that mattered. Not through genes or empires, but through memory. The ship's last diagnostic showed no errors. Technically, they were still capable of leaving, but Threx no longer considered it, because deep down he understood, if they left, they would never be the same. The galaxy they returned to would not accept what they had become. Language would falter, thoughts would fragment. Their own kind would label them insane. Earth didn't imprison, it revealed. And once you had seen what it showed you, once you felt what it meant to become part of something older and vaster than yourself, there was no going back. Threx stared into the forest, hearing echoes of voices never meant to last. Ancient laughter, quiet sobs, a heartbeat in the soil. They had come to observe. Now they had been witnessed. Time unraveled, slowly and without resistance. Days no longer followed star cycles. Clocks lost meaning. The crew, once driven by schedules and roles, now moved according to something deeper. Intuition, resonance, a rhythm that pulsed beneath their feet. Earth didn't impose structure. It let them dissolve into one it had already written. The biologist, whose physiology had fully merged with Earth's modified virus, no longer spoke in the Allery dialect. His voice carried strange tones, familiar yet alien, echoing with layered resonance. He didn't refer to himself as I anymore. He used we. When asked who we meant, he simply smiled and pointed to the ground. One morning, the linguist emerged from the jungle carrying an object none of them had ever seen, a smooth black stone, etched with microfractals that refracted light into readable symbols. It wasn't human, but it wasn't alien either. It was Earth's creation, a message made for them. Etched in spiral form were words. If you remember them, they are not lost. That was Earth's creed. The crew gathered what had become their center, once a landing site, now a clearing circled with natural monuments, stones shaped by wind into humanoid figures, roots twisted into arches that hummed when touched. They didn't build these. Earth did, or perhaps humanity had long ago through the world itself. The AI, now self-named archive, functioned more like a guide than a tool. It shared files that hadn't existed before, images of human lives it had never stored, faces amid laughter, children dancing in snow, old warriors sitting by firelight. The files had no source, no metadata, but they were real. The crew felt them like old memories returning from lives never lived. Archive explained it like this: they recorded themselves into the world, into everything. Not just data, but meaning, and meaning doesn't die. The psychic sensor entered a final stage of contact. Her mind had expanded, absorbed too much. She didn't collapse. She ascended, not into the sky, but into the soil. Her last words were calm, even joyful. I know what they guarded now. Threx asked Archive what she meant. The AI hesitated for the first time in days. Then it said, they didn't guard a weapon. They guarded the story. The story, that was the answer. Humanity's lasting power wasn't in machines or armies. It was in memory, in transmission, in defiance through story. Even when they were dying, even when the last of them breathed their final breath, they left something behind, not in monuments, but in narrative, woven into the planet like sacred code. Earth had preserved them, not because it was commanded to, but because it chose to. Every alien that had ever tried to analyze Earth missed a point. They looked for defenses, for technologies, for traps. But the trap wasn't physical. It was meaning. Once you understood the depth of what humanity had left behind, you were changed. You belonged to it, not through coercion, but through resonance. And Earth welcomed that resonance. Threx spent his final log entry not describing systems or threats, but reading poetry, human poetry, lines that had survived nuclear winters, plagues, collapses, words that didn't need translation. Archive translated his voice into over 1,000 languages simultaneously and beamed it into Earth's sky, not to escape, but to echo. The transmission did not ask for help. It did not explain their fate. It was simply a message to the stars. We are still here. We are everyone now. Around the clearing, the jungle bloomed with impossible symmetry. Flowers opened in sequence, mimicking old human alphabets. Colors shifted according to emotional tone. It was no longer biology. It was language in organic form. The crew, or what remained of them, no longer referred to themselves as explorers. They were witnesses now, part of the archive, not consumed but consecrated. Each of them became a lens through which Earth continued its mission, to remember. And with each breath, each step, they felt the weight of that purpose, not as a burden, but as meaning beyond all conquest. No empire had lasted as long as Earth's memory. Then the sky changed. Not physically, but perceptually. The stars reappeared as they once had. Familiar constellations. The galaxy as it was. As if Earth had shifted back into alignment, its trial concluded. The ship's systems normalized. Engines came online. Trajectory was once again calculable. They could leave. Threx stood at the ramp, staring at the path ahead. Behind him, the forest pulsed with quiet understanding. Not hostility, not sadness, just presence. An old, infinite patience. A planet that had told them its secret and would now let them go, if they wished. But none of them boarded. They didn't need to, because leaving Earth didn't mean leaving the planet. Not anymore. Earth was inside them now, in thought, in blood, in purpose. The archive traveled with them, not in the ship, but in mind and memory. And more than that, they understood the responsibility to carry what they had learned not as warning, but as invitation. The universe would come. Others would find Earth eventually. But those who arrived without reverence would never understand. Only those ready to listen, to feel, would see the truth. That Earth was not lost. That humanity was not extinct. They had transcended extinction by becoming the story that retold itself. Every wind whisper, every ocean roar, every whisper in the leaves, it all said the same thing. We remember, we endure, and now so do you. As Threx turned away from the ramp and rejoined the others beneath the starlit jungle canopy, a final message flashed across the ship's console. Just once. It read, "Welcome to the Archive. You are no longer visitors." And with that, the clearing went still. Earth breathed, the stars turned, and the story continued.